Oh, hello world, it's your host, Data Mining Mike, and on this episode of the podcast, we are going to talk about what is fiber optic used for? My guest today is Ryan Cutright. Ryan is an expert fiber optic cabling technician who has been instrumental in the building of numerous server farms and data centers. He is a font of knowledge, and we go into unique topics that explore more than just fiber optics. I am highly confident at the end of this period of instruction, you will be able to take what you've learned and apply it to your brand or business, and that's called value. And because of that, you should like this video and please watch it until the end. Remember that sharing is caring, subscribing is what winners do, but smashing the bell is what legends do. This channel breeds legends. But first, AI news. The Chinese have developed an artificial pain sensing skin that uses zinc and gallium crystals to identify potential hazards. The robotic hand equipped with the skin and algorithm successfully differentiated between safe and harmful objects at 97.5% of the time. Cool. Is it on? Cool. And we are here. Tell the world about you.
Hey, how's it going, Mike? This
Good,
is Ryan. Ryan Cutright here. Coming from my basement here. You can't really tell, but it's under remodel, but just kind of going through it. And
Cheers.
Going section by section. Yeah, cheers, Mike.
It's the holiday season. We're here getting this podcast done. It's his first podcast. He's a really cool guy. He's got a lot going on at the data center, and he does some low voltage work. So he's going to talk about whatever's on his mind in that world.
Yeah. So like Mike said, I'm a licensed EL06 here in Washington State, which is a specialty electrical license, which allows me to work on anything. I believe it's 50 volts or less. But I think in Washington State, the RCW, I believe it's down to 30 volts now. But we just deal with all like data cabling, low voltage, signal cabling, like security access controls, cameras, any kind of telecommunication work. We just kind of do it all, and kind of work under the 01 electrical contractors here, and while we work out here at the data centers. So it's just kind of like bylaws and Washington State rules that we all have to abide by to be able to work. But as we I don't know what you want to know about.
Well, how do you become one? How do you become a low voltage technician in Washington State?
Well, it's changed quite a bit over the years. When I got into this 10 years ago, I joined the local union, IBEW 191. I've been a member ever since, but I've also not worked a union contractor for a few years just because you got to go where the work is, and everybody understands that. We all got mouths to feed and people to take care of. But as I was saying about when I got into this 10 years ago, I got into it as an installer, which is basically kind of works under like the 09 license here in Washington, which deals with a lot of like data network specifically. So like we weren't allowed to do any kind of low voltage work like at all, and unless it was pre-existing, and then we have to be working under somebody who has an electrical license to be able to do it, which we all did because we all had. The companies I work for, they had the permits and the right license guys to be able to allow us to work. And so that went on for years and years, probably 6-7 years. And then they opened up, the union opened up a low voltage 06 apprenticeship, which we were able to get some of our hours for the 09 work signed off because Washington was allowing some of the work that we were doing be classified as 06 work. So we got some hours signed off. And where was I going with that? But yeah, so that kind of failed the first time they tried to implement it just because they lost a lot of people. It kind of was like nobody really wanted to head it up either. And there was a lot of like political, logistical things within the union hall that weren't being done properly between the state, the union, and just people dropping out, just not wanting to do it. So, and that was about the time, I think it was 2017, I just basically got out of it, the union work, and just went where the work was, which was, a non-union contractor, which I spoke with the union. They were okay with it because they understood, like, hey, got to work, got to eat, got to live. So I got the union's blessing at that time to go work non-union, which I did for about 3.5 years, almost 4. So, yeah, because I was 2017 to 2020, December of 2020. So, it was about 3.5 years working non-union at that time. And then at that time, when I got out in 2020, they restarted up the 06. It was always there, but they were actually putting more effort into it, especially the union, because in 2018, I believe, Washington State passed in the legislature. It wasn't a law; it was just more of another RCW code. Everybody knows what RCW means, was Revised Code of Washington, to where anybody doing any kind of electrical work, and since we were considered 06s or doing 06 work, starting in 2020 or 2022, we all had to be in some sort of apprenticeship program or already have your license, which then really pushed me to get my training card up to date, and so that way I can get my hours signed off. And then that was a slow process, but I am now officially, a licensed EL06 here in Washington now. And yeah, it felt good getting it. I can tell you that. So
yeah, it was quite a process. It was really difficult.
Yeah. Well, like with a lot of these specialty licenses, I believe there's, I think there's 11 total electrical license. The 01 is kind of like the blanket general. You can do any kind of electrical work. And then you have your 02, which is your residential. And then you have your 03. I don't think there's an 04, but then there's 06, an 06A, 07, 07A, and those kind of fall like underneath an 06 on some of the license there. And because I believe 07 is appliances. And so that unless it's, 30 volts, or if it runs off of 30 volts or less, we can work on it. Just we don't need to be supervised, basically. But that's something like your appliance stores, they have mechanics or their technicians that will do that type of work all the time. So what I'm getting at is, with a lot of these specialty license, for you to get your hours signed off, you got to be working under an already licensed person.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can't get any hours signed off. And then, like for my instance, being as installer starting out, there was no way to get my hours signed off properly. So it took me 10 years to get all my hours. But like if you were just giving like an 02 and 01, the state is really on them to be really, like, you got to have a journeyman per 4 apprentices underneath you at all times. And you got to be supervised at a minimum of 75%, which basically means if you're working a 10-hour shift, 2 hours of it, or 2.5 hours, you don't have to be supervised, basically. And, but yeah, so your 01s, your 02s, they can get their license. It typically, an 02 can get it in about 4 years. And then the 01s, they typically get about 4 to 5 years, depending on how many hours they've worked as well.
Mm-hmm.
And but the specialty license, they just, a lot of the work, you weren't being supervised, or you don't have the right permit pulled, so you can't have your hours signed off. And the state looks at that very carefully. And but just basically, my opinion is, the more licensed or more of the licenses get split up, it's going to be so that way they can charge you more money.
Yeah.
So the state has more revenue. Because if everybody was just a general O1 or O2, they're not going to make a lot of money off of people and stuff like that, basically. But I'm happy with the work I do. And like I said, I've been doing it for a little over 10 years now. So, yeah.
Cool. So how do you build a data center?
Hire a bunch of contractors and they subcontract all the work out. No, just
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that makes
No, it's just like
it's kind of really vague.
Yeah, it is like
how do you build what's the first thing you got to think of when it comes to installing wire into a data center?
Well, a lot of it is the work that we do is a lot of it's with fiber optic work because it's just, fiber optic runs at the speed of light. The only restriction is the equipment at either end, able to process the information as it comes in. That's basically the biggest restriction now with technology, and, it's only going to get better over time. I mean, especially when they start really introducing, quantum computing in there. But to go with your original question is, so it's just like any build. You start from the ground up. There's a lot of underground work that you don't see. There's a lot of just for instance, one of the jobs I worked at, it was a Microsoft site. The first phase of it alone, the amount of fiber we ran inside that the 4 buildings for the data halls, and then the MDF, which is basically, you can describe that as like the brain of the operation. They said if you took every fiber strand and put them tip to tip or end to end and just stretch it out, it would literally encircle the entire equator of this planet. So just underneath a plot of land like that, you can understand how much data gets ran around just in a data center right there alone. So, and that was just the first phase. And I have built now probably 11 buildings over my career, and I'm working on my my 12th and 13th and 14th because they're all just being built simultaneously right now. So it's it's been a lot of work over the last 10 years, but like especially with my our trade, you'll be traveling like 100% of the time, 70% of the time. That's just kind of how construction is in general. But with these data centers being built here in this area, within a 30-mile radius, we don't need to travel because we have the cheapest electricity in the United States, if not North America, if I remember correctly. Just right here in Douglas County alone. I mean, it used to be Grant County, the neighboring county to Douglas, but now it's Douglas County because they worked out a lot of contracts with basically with the federal government to give them more tax breaks, so it's able to make our electricity even cheaper with with all the hydroelectric dams we got, in this area, which, as you know, they sell that back east to the West Coast, California, Texas. Even though Texas doesn't really take a lot of people's electricity, but sometimes they have to. So So, but yeah. So yeah, you just get a sense there about how much fiber in just one of the phases gets built, and how much data gets ran around these buildings, and it's just they pack them tighter and tighter as we keep building them. Like from the first phase that was built out here, the very first building for Microsoft, to be specific about whose data centers. They started building back in 2006 in Quincy, Washington. They, if I remember correctly, they officially opened up in 2009, and that was the Columbia data centers. And at that time, it was the biggest data center on the planet. Since then, with Amazon, I think Amazon actually has the biggest data centers now, next to the Pentagon. So for commercial use, basically.
I believe it.
Yeah,
I mean,
and so
put a lot in the cloud computing.
When I got into this, I was, because typically these servers and the fiber's lifespan is about 7 to 10 years, sometimes 5, depending on whenever they want to just basically upgrade everything. So when I got into this, it was during that building's first upgrade, network refresh. So, but at that time, I didn't even touch, for I think the first 6 months of me working, I didn't even touch a single cable.
So I didn't know that they have to replace the fiber every 7 years.
Yep. That's kind of more of a standard, not like a rule. It's just they just
sell more
over
fiber?
What's that?
To sell more fiber?
That probably could be it, but it's basically the in face of the fiber and the in face of the equipment it attaches to. These lasers, they run in the infrared, but they're highly concentrated, especially the single mode fiber.
Yeah.
So just years of basically you can think of it as like abuse. The ends are what's being fried on them just over time, and that's just kind of just how just things work. Just high powered lasers will just deteriorate things over time. I mean, realistically, they can just replace the equipment just at the end face. They call them SFPs, and they can realistically they can just replace that, terminate and re-terminate the fiber. Realistically, that's what they could do, but it's more they've been sold on just because maybe the rest of the cable with the lasers going through the glass in there might be starting to get bad, so replace it all. So so it is kind of like basically a sales pitch to get they always upgrade your system, but also at the same time you're running on 10-year-old equipment. It's outdated. There's faster things that can process over the years, so might as well upgrade it all. So,
dang, I didn't even consider that. So, it makes me think about the C-fiber cabling, too. They must have to replace that. That's a lot of C-fiber.
Yeah, when they get on boats and they go out in the middle of the ocean and they have splice points, so they basically drag the cable off the ocean floor, and there's cans that they open up. And if there's any fiber that's damaged, they just they have their service loops in there, so they can just resplice it. Oh, I probably was too far away there.
Yeah, so that makes me think. I would imagine that the C-fiber guys probably would just resplice and not.
Yeah, because
lay
these
miles of fiber cable.
Yeah, I mean there is fiber that runs directly, through the ocean, but they, we try to be smart about it to where they run it as close to the, the coastline as possible. But sometimes you just can't do that because how are you going to connect to Hawaii?
Yeah, there's one that goes from here to Japan,
and then from New York to London. There's a line. I mean, they did that with wire back in the 1800s. They did that so that way they could have the telegraph working from New York to England. So, they already knew how to do this process.
That's a hell of an engineering feat if you think about that.
Oh, just think of the reels, the coils, the amount of wire that it takes, and with the fiber amount of fiber that it takes to do that.
Well, yeah, even just back then when they're like, you know what? We should just connect a telegram between us and England. Kind of like setting up the can and the wire. Like, hello, England? Hello?
Exactly, yeah. That's what? Going through the Atlantic Ocean, that's like 3,500 miles plus.
Yeah, that's a lot. And they had to think about, how do we preserve copper cable in sea water?
Yeah, because what salt does to any kind of metal, it just corrodes it instantly. So,
oh yeah, absolutely. So, what do you see as the future for fiber optic?
Well, the technology for fiber optic is kind of at its peak. The limitation is literally the equipment that processes all the information, and that's just getting better. I mean, kind of like I kind of mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, quantum computing is going to be the next thing. I mean, they already have them out there, already in use. They're just obviously not commercially viable for everything that we need, because your 16-bit computer just does phenomenal as it is. And quantum computing, it's going to be more for like the AI stuff, more than, just them, processing your data. Because like your data there's not a lot. I mean, because what they're holding, your credit card numbers, your tax information and stuff like that. So it's like, do they really need quantum computing for that? I mean, realistically, no. But also with the firewalls that come along with quantum computing, it's just above and beyond any firewall we can build with our 16-bit computers.
Yeah.
So it's basically that'll be the only thing. It's just why they would make it more commercially viable for your data will be for more security purposes. But quantum computing, that's obviously everybody hears about it all the time. It's the next frontier. It's basically for all our AI that they've been building over the last few years. And just a little fun fact: there's in Quincy right now, they're building a data center for the AIs.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with Microsoft or anything like that, like we've been talking about. This is, I can't remember the company that's going to be running it, but it is specifically only for AI.
So they're building a transformer.
Yeah. Or maybe they're building Skynet. I don't know.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. That is cool. So I wonder, have you dealt with what sort of servers? What sort of servers have you dealt with?
I try to stay away from that portion of it. I mean, I've done that where the servers come off of the like semi trucks, and we uncrate them, we wheel them in, and before this, we run all the fiber optic, all the copper cabling that goes along with hooking up these servers, and that's essentially what these data centers are for. Like, so basically every row that's in a data center is rented out by a company, or maybe blocks of a section or rows gets rented out by a company. And so what we do before then, we build a central rack. I'm trying to be basically, I'm going to say this as vague as possible, but to make sense, because I do have an NDA, so I can't say specifically how we build out rows. But there's a central rack that all the central data comes into and goes out from, and then that's where that's what basically the servers are talking to, and then it goes back to your IDFs, MDFs, and those are like the mainframes of the whole network. So that way everything is talking to each other, operating properly. So, and we just basically wheel the servers in. They're just in racks on wheels. And you just wheel them into place. We finish up our wiring, and then they power them up. And then they go through all their testing process after that to make sure the network is operating properly. And then it goes live. Then all your information, mine, everybody else's data just runs through there. So,
how bad have people messed it up? Like they wired everything totally wrong.
It happens a lot, just because it's more so that it's because they weren't supervised properly, or we get the wrong labels. Because every cable has to get a label on, otherwise you don't know where it goes. These things are like 30-meter jumpers, so it's like 90 feet. So you're like, I don't know. Like, I can go through all the cable tray and all the gutters and start tugging at it at every 90. And you're like, is this it? Yeah. And just trace that back, but that would just take forever. So if your labels are wrong, you can plug it into the wrong thing, plugs into the wrong port in the central rack that I discussed. And basically, that's just saying, like, hey, this is not communicating properly. So it just kind of ties up their network, because their monitoring system that we also, put, the infrastructure that we build for them also, it will just basically can't process things properly. So because every port is designated for a certain data coming in, and if it's not coming in from the right server, it doesn't know what to do with it. So it's like it's just giving the wrong information out, and so it becomes a problem. But there's a lot of redundancies that we build with these data centers too that helps prevent that. So if something like, say, a row goes down here, all the data goes to another data center. But doing that also causes a lot of like outages for like people not be able to access their data that they whatever data that they have. There's a time delay because of the processing. So that it pretty much becomes a big fiasco, especially if the power is also not wired up correctly. It like doesn't have the right voltage.
Yep.
And if it's not the right voltage, it can't power the servers. So.
Well, yeah, I'd imagine there'd be some people that could really mess some shit up. There we go. Now we just go back to just talking.
Yep.
Yeah. I bet there'd be like, I could imagine there'd be some guy like, this dumb son of a bitch wired up everything fucking wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Totally fucking wrong.
Oh, yeah. I've been there when the customer sees that, and like they're not happy because we hear numbers to where like if for every minute a server is down, this how much money is being ticked off that they're losing because. So for instance, like Amazon, Microsoft, they just rent out their floor space. I mean, Amazon kind of has their own type of stuff, but it's like Sabi Networks, our data centers, Vantage data centers, Microsoft. They're the ones that are basically building all the commercial ones around here. And so basically, if a server goes down, they got to figure out, like, if I remember correctly, they got to pay some of this money back for the downtime to the company that's renting out that row. So yeah. So like money adds up quick every second, every minute, every hour that it is down. So there's horror stories that I've heard before to where to where it's like, hey, this was down for an hour. This was $400 million, and you're like, what? So it becomes a big problem quick. So
$400 million an hour. Jesus.
And that's just one row going down. Just think of like if there's a power outage, and say the generators, the backup system doesn't kick on quick enough, or it doesn't come on at all, and a whole site goes down. Think how much money they're losing then. It's probably enough to bankrupt them.
Oh yeah, absolutely enough to bankrupt them, and then it's gonna. God, that would suck if there was some wire, that one thing that was plugged in wrong. Yeah, and you're bringing up things about data centers I didn't even think about, like the mainframe versus the rack in the center. Yeah, but oh well.
Yeah, and that's essentially like what the contractors I've worked for build is like the infrastructure. So basically the tier 2s, tier 1s of the whole network, so that way everything talks properly outside the building, inside the building. So that way when the servers do come in, everything's just operating like it should. So
what are the server brands? Are they NVIDIA?
I never really paid attention to what type of brand it is. I mean, you just hear like, this is this company. So you're like, oh, okay. So be careful with these ones. Like I've actually because a lot of the work I've been doing over the years has been Microsoft, obviously. I've hooked up Xbox Live before. So I mean, it's kind of cool, especially like if you're a fan of a certain game, and like they'll tell you like, this is for this game. And like I've wired up the Halo 3 servers and Halo 4 servers. So
cool.
Yeah. So It's kind of cool. So and it's kind of cool now too because since Halo Infinite's been out, when it's logging on to the multiplayer, it'll tell you connecting to the nearest data center, and I'm like, oh, I know exactly where that is. I know exactly where that server is. So it's kind of cool, and what's nice too is since these data centers are being built around here for Xbox Live, we kind of have like the fastest network, and like we're gonna get the best connection to somebody who's in like Nebraska or North Dakota because they don't have data centers out there. So
if you're in a Halo competition, you should come here.
Yeah, basically.
And play
for
the fastest connection.
Yep.
Probably just go into the data center and just plug in.
Yeah, just plug directly right into it.
Like, here I am. So that's about a data center a year that are getting put up.
It's from dirt to completion, it's about 2.5 years, depending on the size.
To build one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the quickest one I've built was 8 months. So, and building something that fast comes with its own type of problem, just because you got a lot of trades building everything really quick, and so there's a lot of trade stacking going on, which with any kind of pro and cons when it comes to anybody's job. Con with that is when you trade stack, you get there. This, like for us specifically, the network's got to, we got to start getting this network up, or we got to get the security cameras up and running today. Oh, there's we got the drywallers here. We got the electrician, the 01 electricians here. We can't work there because they're exactly where we need to be at, and you can't just come up and be like, "Hey, you need to move." So if say you're working there first, and somebody goes, "Hey, you need to move because I have to work here," what are you going to say? Fuck you.
Yeah.
And you say, "Fuck you, go talk to my foreman, and then maybe we'll work something out," because you're like, I'm here first. I have my job to do, and it's, causes fiascos. But
or they did it first, and then you go through to do it, and they did something that fucked up everything, and now
that happens. I've ran fiber and through conduit. Dropping into these UPMs, which is basically where the power comes in and distributes out, or UMSs. I'm sorry, where the outside power comes in from the service provider. And when you run fiber in there, and then somebody gets the wrong print, and they look at that conduit, and they're like, "This isn't supposed to be here," but since they want to get their job done, they just cut your shit out.
Oh.
And then you go back there the next day or next week, and you're like, "Where's my cable?" And you go up into the box because you're like, "Oh, maybe from this junction box somebody had to pull it back for whatever reason." And then they just hit everything up above, the ceiling grid, or maybe down below, in a box. And you get there and there's nothing there at all, or you see where it got cut at, and you're like, "What?" Because you're like, this was a 300-foot pole, and it went through conduit. This isn't an easy fix.
Damn.
So I've had to deal with that before, and it does happen a lot. Just to keep my bitching down. I mean, it's literally the old ones that just be like, "Nope, I'm here. This is I'm more important than you." And you're like, "We all got mouths to feed, man. This is my profession. That's your profession. Be professional." But you always get like guys that just don't care. And it's normally like the travelers that come in because they're like, "I'm just here for a job. If they don't want me here, I'll go home." That's kind of their mentality. So they just don't care about anything that happens on the job site. They're like, "I'm making my money and I'm going home."
Damn.
So
that would just seem like that you would. There should be some sort of higher person, like a job foreman, you can talk to before you start cutting away into shit.
If in a perfect world, yeah, every trade, like general foreman, superintendents, they need to talk to other trades before they go out to the field. So that way it prevents the trade stacking. Because you trade stack 2 contractors in the same area, no work gets done. Now let's think about it if like 3 of them are in the same area, 4 of them are in the same area. Mm-hmm. They're just competing for space, and just no work gets done at that point. So, but that's just, the con part of, construction in general. Like every contractor out there that's, does whatever profession they have, they all have to deal with it as well. But it all falls on, the general contractor being able to schedule things properly. So, but we all work through it. I'm still here. Mm-hmm. So I still make my money, still get my jobs done. So,
yeah, the general contractor scheduling it.
Yep.
Is there any safety guys that are there who go around being safety Nazis?
Oh yeah, it's I believe if we need to have one safety representative for every either 25 or 30 employees.
Damn.
And that's for every contractor.
Oh, shit.
So, well, I mean, I believe that's an IBEW rule. So, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me, but that's what I think it is. So, say you have 70 people on site for your for whatever contractor you're working for, they have to have a minimum of 2 safety representatives in. So.
Damn. I didn't even realize that. That's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Well, some of these safety reps, they sometimes they don't make as much as they should. Because like, I got a couple friends who went to school, like college, didn't know what they wanted to do, but then the last year when they get their degree, they're like, "Oh, I'll get into like OSHA training, and stuff like that," and they get their degree in safety. Construction safety or whatever it is. And one of my friends, I guess more of an acquaintance, he went and worked at a gold mine, like straight out of college. Mm-hmm. And he was like making $120,000. And his biggest thing was, walking out on the job site every day. If there was an incident, obviously he had to do his paperwork, but he just basically told me, he's like, yeah, every day I do my morning walk, meetings, and I come back to my desk and fill out any paperwork, if there is whatever paperwork he needed. And at the end of the day, he'd go back out, do one more walk, and that was his day. And he goes, it's the easiest, most boring job I've ever had. So...
That's cool.
But yeah, but think of that, just coming right out of college, not like, especially this day and age, coming right out of college, nobody makes that type of money unless you're, a successful lawyer or doctor right away. Mm-hmm. So he really lucked out in that way, just making that last career change in his last year of schooling and be like, oh, I'll just do this. Just to see how, he basically said, just to see if I like it. So, I mean, being like safety and whatever level of certifications you have that comes along being a safety representative, you can make a lot of money or you can just make the bare minimum,
Yeah. That is something. I remember the OSHA, whatever, highest level safety guys. They can make good money.
Yeah.
Being those people.
Like you can get your OSHA 500, and then you can be an instructor. Then you can just stop working at job sites, and you can just be an OSHA instructor. Yeah. So then you can teach the classes that get people the certifications that you did yourself. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So, talk about the podcasts you've been listening to lately.
Well, I kind of keep it simple. I like Joe Rogan. I still listen to Joe Rogan a lot. Bill Burr's, I still like listening to his a lot. I don't know if you heard, but Daniel Tosh just started his own podcast.
About time.
Yeah, so because that whole thing. I mean, maybe not everybody knows, but
I was surprised he got dropped from Comedy Central or whatever.
well,
the hell
he
was
kind
on
of was
for
fed up with
California.
from what I understood, he was kind of fed up the way they were running their stuff. I mean, Comedy Central is almost going bankrupt anyways. Yeah. And how his contract was written, if Comedy Central, because they wanted to cancel him because they just basically they couldn't afford him anymore. Mm-hmm. And way his contract was written, because it was really weird. If I remember correctly, they renewed like 3 or 4 more seasons, but then the following year they're like, no, this is your last season now. But his contract was written up to like, if your contract got terminated by them, they would still pay him out for the years that he would have been, airing his show. So it sounded like he just took that year and a half, 2 years off, because I think he had a kid. Him and his wife finally had a kid. And so what are you going to do when you have a kid and you got a bunch of money and you don't have to work? You're going to be home. Yeah. So, but he did, just by listening to this first podcast that he did, he just, just planned out and just tried to get this thing going, which is realistically the lowest budgeted podcast I've seen. Mm-hmm. And the way he started it off was pretty funny. He goes, I'm not going to have any famous people on here. He goes, like today, I'm having my wife's gynecologist.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah,
though.
He's like, that's my first guest ever is giving me my wife's gynecologist.
That is funny. That's a funny premise to start for like a joke. Too.
And I watched. I
had my wife's gynecologist over for the podcast.
And then another one, he had his life coach on there, his dog walker.
Oh shit!
Yeah, because he basically said, he goes, I just don't want to really have to go search for a lot of famous people to come on here.
Yeah.
So he goes, I'm just going to find whoever, if they're famous or not, I don't really care. And we're just going to bring them on here and we're going to talk. So.
I feel him. I know what's up. Hey, I'm in the same boat.
Yeah. So I've watched 2 episodes, and I think he's got 6 of them out now. But yeah, it's pretty low budgeted. I'm going to say that.
How long are they?
I think half hour to an hour.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they're not long, not long at all, but some of it's still funny. I mean, it's still basically Daniel Tosh. Mm-hmm. His comedy, he hasn't changed his comedy at all. So it is what you expect it to be. So
good. I'll have to check that out.
Oh yeah, and Your Mom's House podcast is literally my favorite one to listen to.
Your Mom's House podcast
with Tom Segura and Christina Pajitsky.
Yeah, I was watching that with the Fed Smoker.
2 Bears, 1 Cave.
I haven't seen that one.
Oh, that's with Bert Kreischer or Brett Kirschner.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that podcast. Yes. Okay,
yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
And Tom Segura. Yeah, 2 Bears, 1 Cave. That's a good one always to watch, too. I mean, just because Bert's crazy. But crazy as in just funny. Just super funny. And I'm kind of disappointed that I wasn't able to go to his show, because he did it here at the Gorge last summer.
Yeah, didn't you go to Tom Segura though?
Yeah, Sarah and I did.
Yeah, Sarah and you did.
Yeah, we did that in the springtime last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then was it last year? Yeah. Well, anyway, it was in the springtime for what I can remember. And then I heard Kreischer was going to be at the Gorge, and I'm like, oh man, I want to go. I want to go. And then I totally forgot about it. And then the day of it, being out there, I just, get on Facebook, and I got friends we're going out there. And I was like, I remember texting Sarah, and I was like, dude, it's today. And she was working that day too. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, I can't go. We can't go because we're working and we got to find babysitters for the kids. And it's too late for that. But that would have been really good to go and do. And I think he's coming back next summer too. And I think Tom Segura is coming to Seattle next year too. So that might be something we want to go and do.
Yeah. I remember when you guys went to go see Breaking Benjamin. It's many years ago, and
right before the pandy started.
Right, yes.
It was literally the February before the pandemic really started hitting here in America.
Yeah.
It was Korn, Breaking Benjamin, and some British like screamo band. I can't remember who it was. So.
Well, I was still going to Gonzaga at the time.
Yes, you were.
And after the following day at school, when I was telling people about blah, 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 it was just in small talk.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought up Breaking Benjamin. And they said, "That's an old band." I'm like, fuck you.
You're like, I was like, don't you ever knock Breaking Benjamin.
They're like, "That's an old band." Like, oh shit. All right, hold on. I'm going to go take a pee-pee. And we're back.
How was that pee?
That was a good pee. Got some more beer, so.
Yep, it's always good.
We've been drinking tonight, so you can't hold what we've been saying against us. So
True.
We're not ourselves.
True.
Like,
beer has a mind of its own.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah.
So cheers again.
Yeah, cheers.
Yeah, might as well just cheers it again, how we started.
Yeah. So tell the world about passionate things that you think people should know about.
The earth is not flat.
Yeah.
I'm pretty passionate about that, and it is ridiculous. I just don't understand why people think the earth is fucking flat. It doesn't make any sense. Like you might as well just say gravity doesn't exist at that point.
Yeah, you know what? That's something, and that's because they listen to really good manipulative people on YouTube that are able to put these videos out, and they truly believe the shit. I've listened to some.
Well, it's kind of sad because we live here in Washington, and the biggest person who's been pushing this flat Earth society over during the last 10 years basically lives here in Washington. Yeah, and God, what was it? There was some show I was watching years ago that had him on there, and they put up this experiment with lasers, and they disproved themselves that the Earth was not flat.
Of course.
And they're like, well, the lasers, being fracted through the air, so it scatters the laser. And I'm like, that's not how lasers work at all. That is not how lasers work at all.
What if you could convince people in the world of fiber optics that there was bloatware?
Bloatware?
Yeah, some made up shit.
Oh yeah.
Up in the fucking fiber lines.
Oh man, yeah, because we, especially with our apprentices and shit like that, we do stupid jokes on them all the time. Like, hey, this cable's a little short. Can you go get the fiber stretcher?
Oh yeah, the fiber stretcher.
Yeah. And when I first started in this industry, I didn't get duped into it because it didn't make sense to me when it happened. I was like, yeah. I mean, I kind of looked when I was like, go get the fiber stretcher or cable stretcher or whatever. Mm-hmm. I just remember going back to the toolbox, and I was like, that doesn't fucking make any sense to me. It was like, how is this going to work?
Yeah.
And of course, the guy, your lead or supervisor was just sitting there laughing, and I was like, that doesn't exist, right? And he's like, yeah, you're right. But we had one of our, he's actually one of my friends, and when he started, they said that, and apparently because we were working in Quincy, and Wenatchee's 30 miles away, he drove all the way to Wenatchee to Platt Electric to look and ask about a fiber cable stretcher.
Good for him. What
You're
a baller.
fucking committed, though.
Good for him.
Oh, my God, dude.
What would make it funnier is if he knew it was a bullshit thing. He's like, okay, I'll go looking for one.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Because, it's stupid things like that we dupe, the new guys on. Yeah. And, kind of mechanics are like, hey, can you go get the headlight fluid?
Yeah. The headlight and the blinker fluid. Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I also try to convince my my apprentices too over something stupid because like I started off about flat Earth. I just put the level on the ground and we go, look, it's flat.
Oh,
I'm like, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong right now.
yeah.
I'm like, it's flat. It's flat, dude. I'm like, the level says it right there. Now, I got a 4-foot level too, and it's all flat.
Yeah. My 4-foot level, when you put a level on the ground,
it's flat, man. It's flat, man.
It means the earth is flat. You know what's crazy, though, is I think about the day, though, kind of shift gears and go back to Mount Adams.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I know.
The day you almost died, and then the next day I almost died.
I tell people about that all the fucking time.
Oh, yeah, I bet. That's some scary shit, man. Like,
it was scary
like
shit.
Like when Sarah and I were at the, what was it, lunch counter? I mean, we called it lunch box because it sounded better to say than lunch counter. And it was like, yes, I mean, it was in the middle of summer, so there's a lot of daylight still out. Mm-hmm. And it was like 7 o'clock, and we're like, where's Mike? Like, we just got 2 hours left of daylight, and like, you had like a windbreaker on, if I remember correctly, and shorts.
And shorts.
So I was like, you're close to the summit. It's going to get cold. Mm-hmm. And it was scary. And like, there was no service. Like, our phones couldn't find fucking service up there the entire time. And I'm like, we're at like the highest point around this area. How do we not have service? Every fucking radio wave would be hitting us. Mm-hmm. How do we not have service? Well, it's kind of boggling my mind at that point.
Mount Adams was a unique experience, man, because it was definitely humbling for me.
Oh, yeah.
And for you, too. It humbled the fuck out of me the second day when I almost felt like I fucking died again if it wasn't for me, like...
hanging on to your fucking pickaxe.
Yeah, pulling out my axe and, like literally doing the thing that they show... in the mountaineer stuff, even though I've never
turn around and just fucking stake that bitch down,
stick it in, and just hold on and hope that your weight can drive in enough to stop.
Well, yeah, it was like about like less than 5 minutes later after you did that, I ended up slipping.
That was incredibly frightening because it was like, holy shit, I'm helpless as fuck watching Ryan helpless as fuck sliding down a damn glacier into the damn rocks. Mm-hmm. Luckily, the rocks were smaller enough. Mm-hmm. Softball size, not fucking big boulders.
Well, with me, really what kind of like got really fucking scary. Yeah. I mean, that whole thing was pretty scary.
Yeah.
But it was like I did exactly what we were told to do and trained, and like we trained ourselves to just react. Is stake your pickaxe into the ground. Mm-hmm. But what? Because Sarah and I bought the ones that we have, 2 days before we went out there. There was no grip on it. So when I stuck it into the ice, that stayed. My hand grip wasn't strong enough because I was wearing my my ski gloves, basically, or just gloves. So and there's no traction really on that either. So my hand just like slipped right off it. Mm-hmm. And then I just kept sliding, and I was like, I'm sliding at like another 100 feet.
Yeah, you slid fucking fast, and I was like, "Oh fuck, man!" And
I had like my micro spikes on,
and you with the damn micro spikes on, and you're not supposed to be.
Yeah, because you can just like catch and go.
You could rip all your tendons of your legs out if you hit wrong.
Mm-hmm. And I just saw kind of I don't know. It was like I saw like a blank area. Mm-hmm. To where there was no boulders. It was just kind of like a flat blank area of gravel. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I tried to aim myself to that with like, because I put my arms out, kind of like we're doing your sledding. You just kind of direct yourself. And it might have helped because I ended up hitting it. And so that way I avoided all the boulders that were to the left or to the right of me. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, it was not a fun experience doing that. I mean, I'd do Mount Adams again, though. Just knowing
we got to conquer it, and we know we got to make it a minimum of a 4-day trip. 1 day to get there, 2 days on the mountain at minimum, and then a day to go home. So, because it's about a 5-hour drive, just because there's no roadways that lead there. That's convenient, So it's like I believe it's a 4 or 5 hour drive just to get down there. So
yeah, and it's crazy.
It's what is it?
The amount
Trout Lake, not Troutdale, because Troutdale is Oregon. Yeah. So Trout Lake is the little small community town that's down there. Would you think it would be a little bit bigger with all the mountaineers that come through there all the time, you know?
Yeah, talk about how you saw the woman take a shit.
Oh, that was literally the highlight of that mountain climb. Because you're just like, so Sarah and I, my wife, I mean, we weren't married at the time, but we were hiking together up the glacier. I can't remember the name of the glacier that's right there. But this is kind of where lunch counter begins, where everybody kind of does their base camp. And we just set up our base camp, got our tent set up. We ate something real quick because I think it was about noon by the time we got to that point. And so we all get our gear on again, started headed up the glacier. There was like this group of women that were kind of all hiking together, but this one of them ended up just kind of lagging a little bit behind. And then we found out why. She was kind of lagging a little bit behind. So she passed Sarah and I, and then we just kind of be like, I was like watching because I was like looking up the mountain, and I just see her just throw off her pack. And I'm like, that's kind of a weird thing to do. Just right in the middle, too. Just in the middle of nowhere, there's like, this isn't a spot you're going to stop and take a breather, you know, and sit down. This is like, she just throws off her pack and then doesn't use her backpack to, like, guard herself at all. She just drops trowel. Mm-hmm. Everything. Just ankles. That's where everything went. And instead of, I mean, logically it makes sense to point downhill. So she pointed downhill and started taking a big old dump right in the middle of the glacier. And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, I shouldn't be watching this, but this is fucking ridiculous. Because she's like, and like behind us, there's like a group of like 10 people. And then like directly just, I don't know, to the left of us, they're probably, I don't know, probably about 50 yards away were the 2 rangers that every day they have to hike to the top and bottom. Or like once a week, because they do a rotating shift, what I was told. But they are hiking to the top, to the summit. Just make sure there's no dead bodies up there, basically, is what their job is. Or anybody injured. And they're watching this woman, too, do this. And I'm looking over at them, and we're all kind of side-eyeing each other. And they're kind of pointing over to, like, kind of getting like, are you seeing this shit, too? Sarah's sitting there giggling next to me, and I'm looking at these rangers, and you can kind of tell, like, they had a consensus, like, if this woman is brave enough just to fucking take a shit right in the middle of this glacier, I'm not bothering her. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But we all saw her brown eye. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It's literally the highlight of the whole hike, just because it was just completely ridiculous, because you're like, you couldn't hold it. And it wasn't like she was having diarrhea either. It was just turds. That's all it was. So she could have hiked another 35, 40 minutes to get somewhere that we all saw there was like rocks that she could have hid behind. Mm-hmm. But no, she had to do it right then and there.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something. We were just being definitely foolish thinking we could go up and do it in one day. And
well, it's like that pitch going up the Piker's Peak, peak was completely deceiving. Because I remember being there when we filled up our water canisters with the glacier water again.
Yeah.
Before we all just started trekking up the mountain, and we're like, oh, that's probably, and I think it's about noon still, like 1 o'clock, and we're like, it's like a 2-hour hike to get there. We were like, we could tell it was steep. We were like, that's 2 hours. 5 fucking hours later. Yeah. Like, because, I mean, you were in a way better shape than us. Yeah. I mean, because you were definitely then you were training for an ultra marathon, so you're just like way better shape. And I'm just because of the work I do, I'm always in like somewhat shape. But what got me the most was not being acclimated to the altitude change, because here in Wenatchee we're at 900 feet. Going to the mountain, you start at 6,000 feet, and then you hike up to 12,000 feet. So you're like, there's a 6,000 foot difference at that point alone. But you need at least a day or two to get acclimated, even at 6,000 feet. You know, the air starts thinning out then.
Yeah, it was feeling very difficult.
I just remember, like, my legs never being tired. It was my head. I felt lightheaded. I felt uncomfortable. I was getting disoriented. And I just remember that, because Piker's Peak is the false summit on the south side of the mountain that we were hiking on. And just getting there, man, it took 5 hours or 4 hours just to get there. And it was like 6 o'clock. Sarah and I stopped, and we just kind of hung out. I mean, it was a beautiful view. I mean, because you could see like hundreds of miles going into Oregon. But it was like 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock, and we're like, we're not going to be able to make it to the summit, because from Piker's Peak is like 11,000 feet, if I remember, like a little over 11,000 feet. And the summit of Mount Adams is like 12,400. So, like, we have another 1,200 feet to go. Like, we don't have the time today to do this at all. And, of course, that's when we were separated, and we couldn't find you, communicate with you. So we're just like, well, we're going to head down and get phone signal and call you. And so from Piker's Peak, Sarah and I glissaded down, which was pretty tiring to do that too, because you got to control your speed. Otherwise, like, you're gone. You're going to the bottom of the mountain, it seems like, because like you pick up because how actually steep that whole how steep that whole mountainside was right there. And because like it's deceiving you, like you don't know, like, because you're basically looking at white because of all the glacier snow. So there's no depth actually how steep this whole mountainside is. And so you're going down there and you're like trying to control your speed with your pickaxe. And then like all of a sudden, like if you don't like just slightly drag it into the ice or walk down, like you pick up speed like instantly. And I remember doing that too. And I remember going that, and then I was like, this is way too fast. And like I had to like dig my axe into the ice to slow me down. So and that was tiring. So like it still took probably 30 minutes to glissade down from that point to the base camp. So yeah, you're right. You know what? I didn't realize how much danger I was in until after I'd crashed into the rocks at the bottom. Oh, yeah.
And then I realized all those warning signs were getting to me, like, don't leave your group. Most rescues happen when you leave your group. I'm like,
dude, and like what really sucked too was because before you ended up meeting up with us at Troutdale. Or Trout Lake, I'm sorry. And so Sarah and I went to talk to the rangers at the station there. And what's kind of like scary, ironic that it happened was the first thing he said when we got to Piker's Peak, he goes, "It looks like you need to go right." He goes, "Don't go that way." And then he goes, "Number 2, don't separate from your group." And then he goes, "Number 3, if it looks like you can't make it that day, don't." And it's just like ironic, funny, scary that you did all 3 things there because you weren't there.
I know.
And you did all the 3 things wrong that he told us not to do. And Sarah and I were like sitting there like before we saw you coming down the mountain, and we were like, that was like the number 1 thing. It was like they told us to, or it's like, don't separate. And then when we got back to base camp, and I'm glad we had that. What was it? The beer and whiskey that we had, that I packed up with us, because all of our nerves were just shot, like just scared for you. I know you were just deathly scared, and you told us like your story, like I went right, and we're like Sarah and I were like, oh yeah, he literally said don't go right.
Yeah, and you know what's nuts is I've told that story to other people. And I said, I went right. And I was like 10 draws and glaciers away. And they're like, oh, damn. Because those who've been to Mount Adams know.
Yeah, they said,
like,
they go, don't go that way.
I was being really, really fucking overzealous. And what really shook me in the end was when I had crashed in the bottom, I was so damn lucky that I just landed in softball-sized rocks, lava rocks, and not smack into a big boulder. I could have easily broken something. And what's crazy is I've had like bad dreams about that since then, where I'm like sliding uncontrollably down like a road or something.
Yeah.
And but yeah, trying to navigate back, I kept realizing like how dangerous of a position I actually put myself into. Because I wasn't sure where I was. It was getting darker, and I could see the nearest tent was way the fuck away.
Yeah, it was way out there.
And so when you get to like near the top of the mountain and you're off by a little bit, you're off by a lot by the time you get further down. And so in hindsight, I should have just went. And that's the thing too, is you're running on lower oxygen.
So you don't think straight.
Yeah, and I was like bullheaded, like whatever, just keep my feet moving, keep breathing, I'll get up. And yeah, you do that, and eventually you'll get there. But then like coming down is the other hard part. Is like, and as it got darker, it got worse.
Oh,
because I couldn't see where the fuck the tracks were.
And you're on a glacier or snow that has no depth. Yeah, it's white.
Yeah, I was really damn lucky. I was really lucky that I survived and made it back. And yeah, but that is some shit. But
yeah, it was a great but scary adventure. Let's put it that way. Yep.
It was a good adventure, but a scary one. But so you and Sarah have done some fun stuff. So you talk about your most recent Utah trip.
Oh yeah. So I mean, it's been over a year now since we've been to Utah. So Sarah and I, we officially tied the knot. Got married in February 22, and we were kind of on the fence of ever like doing a like a honeymoon type of situation, but we have a goal to visit all the national parks here in the United States. If we do it, maybe even Canada, who knows? But that's kind of been our goal. And so like every year we either take a week or 2 weeks to go and do this venture. So since we got married, we were like, well, maybe we'll treat this year as like a honeymoon and do our national park trips that way. And we were trying to think of which national park we want to go. Do we want to go to the California and go to Yosemite? That's like Sarah's been there before. She said it's like her second favorite national park she's ever been in. I've never been, so I was like, yeah, let's do that. But then we also started talking, like, she saw like a lot of like videos and like reading articles about the loop, the southern loop in Utah, where you can visit 5 national parks or 4. Yeah, it's 5 national parks and some national monuments too along. And it just like you could start either at the Grand Canyon, and that's just added, and that could be an extra one that you could do, or you could fly into Las Vegas and then head north from there and then start in Zion. So we decided to like, okay, let's fly into Vegas, get a rental car. It could be the easiest place to ever get a rental car is in Vegas. And flew in, got our car, and drove to Zion that same day. So it was a long day, but it was was worth it because the next morning we woke up and started, and we were in Zion, and we spent the whole day there. It was pretty much like monsoon raining. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the park that we wanted to see was shut down, but it was also kind of cool because it was like, this is like the scenery you don't see in the middle of summer because it's a desert out there. And so we got to see waterfalls that only exist during the early spring snow runoff. And so it was actually really cool too. It was like 3 days or 2 days before we were there. My buddy Gabe and his brother were in Las Vegas, but they did a day trip up to Zion too. So it was either 2 days, maybe even like the day before he was there, and it was like 100 degrees. So he literally experienced the exact opposite what we got to experience.
Yeah.
So I mean, so it's kind of cool. So we got to see all the scenery that doesn't exist during that time of the year, and on that, and the whole trip, that was probably our favorite national park we went to, because that's just the beginning of the loop. So we didn't really know what we were getting into. We were just like, there's a reason why it's called Zion. It's just absolutely gorgeous. There's nothing like it anywhere, just like every national park. There's nothing like it. So it's just awesome. And so then we spent 2 days there. Or was it a day? One full day there, but 2 days there, driving there, and then one full day there, and then we drove out the next day to go to Bryce Canyon. And Bryce Canyon, it's beautiful in its own right, and it's like really like deceiving. Yeah, I mean, because it's just like you're on a cliff wall driving it, and you get to see all the hoodoos, is what they call them. It's this type of rock formation, and the natives at that time, they called them, like, the hoodoos were like their ancestors' spirits. They were formed into these rocks and create these shapes. Because if anybody knows about Bryce Canyon, it's clay, mud, rock that, like, over the years of rain, it's like formed these very unique shapes. And there's this one hike you can do. It's called the Queen's Garden. It's called the Queen's Garden because there's one rock that looks like, there's like a famous photo of Queen Elizabeth II, I believe. And the rock, I mean, to me, it vaguely resembled her, but maybe 100 years ago, without the erosion, maybe the shape actually did look a lot more like the, Queen Elizabeth. So they called that whole hike area the Queen's Garden, which was really awesome. I mean, I like doing it. There's like a lot of like little how the water eroded the rocks. There's like archways you would walk through, or little tunnels you would walk through. So it was a pretty cool experience. But the whole park is basically on a cliffside. It's not, to me, it's not technically a canyon because you're just on a cliff the entire time as you're driving, I think like 4 miles through the park, maybe 6, 7. And you get to like the most, or the very end of the park, because it's just one road in, one road out. There's nothing else. There's no other connecting road. And you get out there, and you can literally see into Colorado. You can see into Arizona. So it's like, it's really cool at that vantage point. And you're like, they have an elevation marker there because it's the highest point in the whole park. And you're at 9,000 some odd feet.
That's pretty tall.
I know. And you're like, it does not seem like you're at 9,000 feet. So,
wow.
Yeah. So that was really cool to see that. And so I'm like, man, we're at 9,000 feet. Then I'm like, man, back at home, I'm 9,000 feet higher than where my home is. But it's all flat land out here. So it's like, it's kind of like mind-boggling, but awesome at the same time, I guess is the best way to put it. Because like I said, you can see into Colorado, and you can see all the way into Arizona because you're just that high up, and it's just that flat of land out there because it's a high desert. So, so we spent a whole day there, and then so a day to drive there, a day to be there, and we drove out again. and then we went to Moab, and there's 2 national parks right next, like just literally right across the highway from each other, which is Canyonlands and Arches. Arches was really cool because it's just a lot of cool rock features, a lot of arches. I mean, that's the reason why. A lot of arches, and it's literally you just spend a day there and you're done. That's all it is. It's cool. I mean, if you're a rock climber, you would definitely spend a few days there. But Sarah and I were just like, it's cool, but we don't need to keep staring at arches. We got our pictures, got to experience it. But the town of Moab was really cool. That's we like being there. It's kind of like a desert, I guess, a desert Wenatchee, I guess you can call it that. And so then the next day we drove into Canyonlands, which is literally across the highway from Arches. And there's like 2 sections of the park. I can't remember what they're called off the top of my head right now. But we went to the northern, I guess you could say it's the northern section, that kind of overlooks the entire national park. And to me, Canyonlands I've never been to the Grand Canyon, but every photo I've seen of the Grand Canyon, that's what Canyonlands reminded me of. But it's also a part of the whole canyon. It's like the beginning of the whole canyon system that runs through southern Utah, Arizona, Nevada, and a little bit of the southern tip of California. It's the beginning of that whole canyon system that leads up into the Grand Canyon, and then eventually the Colorado River will supposedly end up into the Gulf of, or the Baja of California, the Gulf that's right there. But I mean, depending what time of year it is, sometimes it doesn't even make it to there anymore. But that was really cool to see that overlook. And once again, you're like at 8,000, 9,000 feet at that overlook too. And you don't think that. And we sat. We went through a little national park ranger had a little education seminar about how it all formed, which is pretty cool. I mean, I like listening to stuff like that. And so Sarah and I kind of sat through I think it was like a 15, 20-minute little seminar instruction class there. And the bottom section, I guess you could call it, was called the Needles. And her friend, Sarah's friend Caleb, was just there, and she was like, "This is actually the better place to this park to go." So we were like, "Okay, we've seen this part. Let's go to the other part now." Normally, it would have been like an hour drive, but with the monsoon rains that came through there when we arrived in Zion, I mean, it hit the whole area. It washed out the whole road leading into Needles. So instead of it being like an hour drive to get down there, it ended up being like a 2.5 hour drive. But we got to go through a lot of like scenic driving that was really cool. Like we ended up going through it's really cool. We ended up getting on this mountain, which was part of the Bear Ears National Park that really hasn't been developed at all. But it was like it kind of skirted it a little bit. And it's like as you're going skirting around the mountain and you look around, it's just completely desert. But then you're looking at the mountain, it's an entire aspen forest. So you're like, this is kind of really eerie and cool at the same time, how topography works. Because you got a complete forest here that's lush, it's green. Yeah. And then you literally just turn your head and it's bare desert. And so it's really cool that there's that single mountain right there that had all that. So, and we ended up driving around that and then eventually getting into the Needles portion because we had to, like I said, it was like an extra hour drive because of that road being washed out. But it was worth it. It was completely worth it. And we camped down there for the night and did this hike that was just straight on the rocks. It was they just had some chains that were kind of strewn about sometimes on posts, and that's the only way you knew where the pathway was. But it was cool. I mean, we didn't get to go into one of the the actual part of the park that's considered the Needles, just because we needed a permit because it's a straight. The only way to access it is hiking because you can't have any motor vehicles in that area, and we just didn't have time to do it, and we didn't have the time to get the permit and pay for the permit just to backpack in there because that would have added an extra day. And then the next day we were planning on camping at this national monument called Natural Bridges, and it was really small. So, but by the time we got there from the Needles, it was really drove around the park. It took us like an hour and a half, and we're like, I guess we're done. So we ended up gaining a day because we were planning on camping there. But it was at like 1 o'clock, and we're like, we're already done with this. I guess we'll drive to our next destination, which was, what was it? Capitol Reef, which was a considerably long drive from that point, but it was the last national park on our loop. And if people know about Capitol Reef, I can't remember why they name it Capitol Reef. Like, to me, it doesn't make any sense because how the park is. It doesn't look like a reef at all. But it was a Mormon settlement back in the day, and when you go there, you get to learn its history, and it's kind of cool because it was like a one way in, one way out, and they drove through this canyon, which is now just a hike that you can go and do, and yeah, it was like they had an orchard in the middle of farmland and orchards right in the middle of this desert because the Mormons ended up getting the water where they needed to, I guess, and just made a completely lush area. And of course, going there, some people do and some people don't know, but you go there, there's this house that you go to. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head right now either, but they're famous for the pies. And you go there, and it's like, you've got to get pie and the ice cream that's there. And so that's what Sarah and I did. We went there and got pie, and it was pretty good pie. I can tell you that right now. So, and we just spent one day there. And since we're, still technically on our honeymoon, since we gained a day, we're like, well, I guess we got to find something else to do, which we ended up going to, what was the place called? It was another national monument, but it's right next to Cedar City.
Yeah.
It looked a lot like Bryce Canyon, this national monument, but you're driving there, you're going up a mountain, and it's a lot of cool scenic, like a cool scenic drive, but you're just going up a mountain. And when you get to this place, you're at 10,000 feet, and one section of the park that you can access, but we just didn't do it because we just didn't want to. We were at 11,000 feet, and then we drove down to Cedar City, stayed the night there, and we just we gained a day. Let's just go party. And we got a hotel, and we're trying to find things to do. But everybody knows, Utah is still basically a dry state. Yeah. So there's not a lot of clubbing that goes on there, anywhere. But Cedar City is also a college town, so it's kind of growing up here, it's kind of you're in a college town. What do people do? They go fucking party. They go clubbing, house parties and stuff like that, and there's just nothing. Absolutely. We ended up just spending majority of the night at this brewery, just hanging out there all night. So, and but yeah, since we gained a day, we ended up okay, now we can spend 2 days in Vegas instead of just one. And so we ended up staying after we left Cedar City, we drove back to Vegas, and we ended up staying up at Fremont Street at the Plaza. Yeah. Which is a very old hotel, the old downtown district. Rakes of cigarettes. But I think it was $70 a night, or it was $75 for the 2 nights we were there. And I'm like, this is a steal. I'm never if I ever come back to Vegas, I'm not staying down on the Strip. I'm staying here. It's cheap.
Yeah, Fremont's fun.
And it's a straight party that happens there 24 hours.
Yeah.
So
I like the Golden Nugget.
the Golden Nugget's pretty dope, dude. We didn't stay there, but obviously we just wandered through it. There's a reason why that's an iconic hotel, because it was like one of the first like resort hotels that ever got built in Vegas. So
Well, they got a shark tank that you can slide through.
Yep, that is true.
With the slide, so that was a lot of fun. I remember that. I've stayed at the Golden Nugget, the Imperial Palace on the Strip, which is grungy as shit. The Golden Nugget's better than the Imperial Palace. I've stayed at the Luxor, which I think the Golden Nugget is better than the Luxor.
I've heard the Luxor is pretty rich. So.
It's grungy. It's
well, and it's also just so far south on the Strip that you're just like, they built that because it's a pyramid, but they built it so cheap that nobody wants to go there, and so like that southern part of the Strip is still pretty vacant because of that, and nobody wants to develop down there.
Build it cheap. That's the thing. And I've stayed. Where else did I stay? I've stayed at Treasure Island. That was cool.
Nice. We the first time Sarah and I went, we went to we stayed at the Mirage, which is
right
next.
Is really fucking awesome.
Yeah, dude, it's a dope place. The only thing we didn't get to do, the only thing we didn't get to do was go to the pool, and the pool is so cool. But
yeah, the pool has the grotto.
Yeah,
which I want to go to.
And we didn't get to do that just because I signed up for that exotic racing, and so I got to drive a Lamborghini that day and race it around the track.
Oh, cool!
But the process of getting back from there, no Uber. For some reason, Uber didn't want to like drive out there, and so we had to call a taxi company. This guy showed up in his personal rig. It seemed like so. I'm like, so this is still basically an Uber. So what's going on here? And this guy drove us back, and I think he just wanted to like waste our fucking time because he drove through instead of taking the freeway system. Yeah, it was going to be like rush hour, but I think it still would have gotten back to the Strip way quicker. But he took us to every fucking grungy point there was in Las Vegas, and in the entire time he just goes, "Yeah, it's you can't get out in these areas." Because they just point you out and like get at you, and I'm just sitting in the back seat with Sarah, and like Sarah's like getting like a death grip on my arm because she's just like, I don't want to fucking be in this vehicle, and I'm just like, shut the fuck up, man. Like I don't give a shit. Like I don't. And he started bitching about like how shitty his life is, and I'm like, I don't give a flying fuck, dude.
You got a shitty Uber driver.
And I'm just like, just fucking get me back to my goddamn hotel, dude. Like I don't need to hear about your shitty life. At all. Like, I don't. Yeah. You're just driving us. You're the fucking chauffeur. Shut up. Like, if you don't want to talk to us, we don't need to talk to you. And, like, it literally took an hour and a half from the fucking racetrack at the north end of town to get back to our hotel, which I think if we just took the freeway, I think we would have gotten there quicker still, even with the traffic going on. But, yeah, so that was just shitty because he was just like, yeah, don't get out in these areas. Don't get out in these areas.
You know what's nuts is I had to get out in those areas one time because my buddy got arrested.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like in charge of getting him out of jail and taking him back. But Clark County, his bail bondsman was the same one who was OJ's bail bondsman.
Of course.
I remember that.
Of course.
Because all I had was I had his phone. He was stuck in Clark County jail. I had his phone. I had his car. My car was broken down in Primm, Nevada, which was like 20 miles away from Vegas. And, yeah, just crazy it broke down there. But either way, long story short, we are driving all around fucking Vegas. My ex and I, Kim, trying to find where the fuck the damn bail bondsman is.
Yeah.
And trying to like lock on a hotel and all this other shit. And turns out, yeah, the bail bondsman, when we met him, he was like, "Oh yeah, I was OJ's." Well, first thing he's like, "Oh, you're a Marine? Well,
Want to see my gun?
yeah, that's the first thing. He's like, "Oh, you're a Marine? You gotta see my guns."
Yeah.
And then he opens up his safe and starts showing me all of his collections. I'm like, "Oh shit, great, yeah."
And you're like, I don't really care. Like, I mean,
Well,
that's cool.
I mean-
no,
I
they're
mean,
like,
it
no,
was
that's a cool
cool.
fucking gun right there,
Yeah.
but we're here on business. Like, I need to get my fucking buddy out of jail.
Yeah. He ended up selling me a magazine.
Oh, did he really?
From one of my SIGs that I had at the time. So I needed a magazine, but yeah, he was a cool bail bondsman. But still, no, you're right. Outside of the strip is rough, and it's fucking scary,
rough, dude.
Really, and like Kim and I did not feel safe at certain places. I'm like, shit, this is really bad. Las Vegas is really bad outside of the strip.
Oh yeah,
It is really fucking bad. This is worse than LA.
I mean, it's still technically ran by the mob. So
shit.
they're all just fucking billionaire mobsmen now. So
I mean, like, and it's like, what do you think of how would you think of somebody who's like, yeah, I grew up in Las Vegas? Like, that's horrible. That's a rough fucking life.
You're like, yeah, I went to this school. You know, my dad was a construction worker. My mom was a go-go dancer. So
yeah, and there's all sorts of weird ass fucking people that live out there, kind of like that shit. With in the entertainment
fun
industry.
fact. Hawaiians love going to Las Vegas.
A lot of people love going.
No, like this is like since the Hawaiians live on a paradise island. So what do they want to go and do? They don't need to go to another paradise island. So they go to Vegas. That's literally where every single one of them go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And was a fun fact too. It's funny because a lot of restaurants in Vegas too sell Spam. So
Yeah.
that is true, dude. It's kind of funny.
You know, I've been to the shit. They do have some good food in Vegas, though.
Dude, like Sarah and I, like it's a franchise, but it's like because there's a restaurant here in Bellevue that's called Fugu de Chao, and it's a Brazilian steakhouse. So they run around with swords and fucking cut off meat onto your plate for you. Coolest concept, man. It's all a gimmick and whatnot because you can just fucking order the food whenever. But it's like a buffet. But instead of the buffet, you have a bunch of hot plates. You just have a bunch of guys running around with swords with fucking meat on it. And they're like, you want this? Well, I mean, you have a card that has, you know, you flip back and forth, red, say, don't come over here. You flip it over green, like, yeah. Like, come bring me more food and whatnot. It's like $50 a plate, but it's as much as you can eat as possible. And it's literally one of the best ways to ever be served, in my opinion. Because I mean, it's a gimmick, but it's fun. It's like going to like a hibachi grill. You're just there for the show. I mean, you're gonna eat the food, but you're not eating all the food while you're there. You know, you're there for the show.
Yeah, as long as it's good, like medieval times. Medieval times was like $70 freaking.
Yeah.
No, it was more like 60, but still, it was expensive. Per thing.
Yeah, so I mean, that was
it
good,
was
and it
really
was good
full.
food, and it was
They
good
gave you a whole
atmosphere
turkey
too.
leg.
It wasn't like you were
night
like
fighting.
packed in, like you weren't just like packed into like a sardine can. Because like you've been to like we've all been to a lot of buffets, and that's kind of like how to do their seating arrangements. Is like you're just fucking packed in like sardines. But we got to have our own table, nobody around us, and we just feel like, yeah, like give me more fucking food, bro.
Yeah.
And they run around and you're like, you want the chicken? And you're like, yeah, give me a couple slices. And they fucking carve it with their sword that's on a sword like right off of there. And they're like, and they show it to you and you're like, yep, that's exactly what I want. And they got prime rib. They got like brisket, ribs, like pork ribs, beef ribs, short rib. And you can name it all. Like it's any type of fucking meat that you would want. They're serving it. So... Yeah. And then they have, you know, the blah, 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 the rinky-dink salad bar. For, you know, because we can't just eat fucking meat the entire time. But salad was good. The sides were good too. So, but that's when you have to stand in line. Is going to the salad bar and the side dish bar. But other than that, man, there's like, well, no, it's great too. I just remember being in line and like the waitresses or waiters would come up to you and like, you want your drink now?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yeah. They're like, I'm sitting over there, and then all of a sudden they bring you your drink as you're standing in line. I'm like, oh, I guess I get the drink as I'm standing in line getting for all my side dishes. So
that sounds like a lot of fun. So talk about Glacier National Park.
Depends on which time.
Yeah. Yeah, Glacier National Park.
Well, the first time I went, it was with Sarah, and just beautiful. We had perfect weather while we were there. And it was like a piggyback type of thing, because the week prior to that we were in Colorado, and we did the national parks down there.
Yeah.
And when we
yeah.
And so we had like 4 days to kill, and we were like decided to go to Glacier because we just had enough time to go. And when we went there, it was perfect weather, like absolutely perfect weather. It was in early September, and so we saw like, yeah, I just remember going there, and it was just like beautiful. Just absolutely beautiful. And we ended up going to Logan Pass, and right at the lodge that's up there, or the visitor center. It's not a lodge because nobody can stay up there. There is a trail that's called Hidden Lake, and leads you to a mountain that's called Bear Hat. Don't know why it's called Bear Hat. To me, it doesn't even look like a hat, but it's like this big rock mountain. It's just this huge rock mountain, really cool. You can look it up. You've probably seen the photo before. And going through there, we saw like mountain goats, really cool. We get to the lake, and it's just beautiful. I loved it. It was just perfect. Like my first experience there was just like perfect weather, perfect. Just everything was perfect when we went there. We went there again this year, and it was like during fire season, and we ended up getting smoked out one of the days.
Oh shit! That's why you got Smokey Bear on your hat.
Yep. And yeah, this actually is a hat from Glacier too.
Yes,
so.
That's why I thought about it, because I saw your Glacier hat.
And but this time around. So we decided to go there for, I think it was 4 days. And the first day we drove there, just drove into the park, got out. The second day we get in there and we're just smoked because there was probably, I think, 9 fires in the area. One really close. One we actually kind of drove through just getting to there.
Oh, shit.
And, like, well, I say drove through, but it was like just smoldering areas still. And like the front line or the fire line already went ripping through the area, but there's still the area smoldering. So we ended up getting smoked out, and we found out. So it was that morning we found out that we also needed to register to go into the park because they were trying to keep traffic down for some weird reason. And I guess this is a lot of national parks are doing this now, which I think is dumb, absolutely dumb, because our tax dollars pay for this. This was never meant for us to have any restrictions for. That's the reason why we set this up, so we can have the natural beauty of our land and preserve it. That's the reason for the national parks. But now they're starting to register people to be able to go into it.
That's horrible.
It's ridiculous. And it's not like every national park's like that. But they don't announce this stuff. It's like you got to take it upon your own self to go on to the National Parks website and look this shit up. And so when we get there, And we find out then, the morning we're going to get into the fucking park, that we can't get in because of that. And we're already waiting in line, too. Because we see a sign as we're waiting in line, have your registration permit. And we're like, what's that? And so we look it up, and literally, they would not have let us in if we did not have that permit. So we wasted a whole day.
Oh, shit.
And since it was smoky, we can't go and do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we drove to Whitefish, which is like 20 minutes away from the national park. But it's like, we can't really do anything. Like, we just did a bunch of window shopping.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, like, Whitefish, I've been there before. It's a cool town. But it's also like, oh, you really can't do anything in the middle of the day except for go and eat.
Mm-hmm.
Do a bunch of window shopping. Okay, well, this is a wasted day. And then the next day, we decided to wake up early because, like, it's loosely regulated, this permit thing. So if you get into the park before 6 a.m., you don't have to register to get into the park. It's stupid. It's absolutely stupid.
Holy shit.
So we wake up early to get in the park because there's no days available for us to get into the park while we're there. And we didn't know that until we saw that sign. And so we just wake up early, get the kids out of bed, just throw them in the car, and we get into the park.
Mm-hmm.
And and we didn't want to drive, drive around the park because in Glacier, they especially if you come in through West Glacier like we did, they have a shuttle service. And we're like, we're going to take this and go where we need to go because of the fact that I've driven that road going up to Logan Pass where the Hidden Lake trailhead's at and the visitor center there. And I'm like, I drove it up there with my truck. And I'm like, I was sketched out because it's just a sheer cliff driving up. And the road is only as big as how the Model Ts were fucking made.
Oh, damn.
So it's a tight squeeze the entire time because they can't dig into the mountainside anymore because it's getting old. I mean, well, not old. It's just, you dig into it, like, it's just going to crumble. And so they can't widen the road anymore. I mean, they do have some like pull-offs that, you know, you can get to let traffic, you know, go by you, or maybe you can get around somebody and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, it's tight. Mm-hmm. And I told Sarah, I was like, we have this Ford Explorer that's actually wider than my truck. I go, I'm not driving up this mountainside again. Mm-hmm. And Sarah's not really that good of a driver when it comes to like high stretch situations like that.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm not driving up there. So we had to like wait on, like we drove to the McDonald Lodge or McDonald Lake Lodge and waited for the shuttle. We knew it was going to be kind of like sprinkling some rain throughout the day. Is what the weather forecast ended up calling for. So we just had light jackets. We're all in shorts too. So we just had like either sweatshirts or light jackets on. And our plan was to go all the way to St. Mary's because I was never been able to go to that side of the park, so I wanted to go and see it. So we ended up taking a shuttle service out there. We ended up eating breakfast out there, or lunch, I should say, on that side. We did a short hike to a couple waterfalls. And then we're like, okay, because the shuttle service there's no time. They just run. Several of them are running throughout the day at all times. Mm-hmm. There's no time schedule. So you just end up going to wherever the drop-off points are, and you just wait. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it'll be 15 minutes. Sometimes it'll be a half hour, depending on which shuttle is being ran. Mm-hmm. And so we do our hike. It's starting to sprinkle. So we just like, all right, let's turn around. Let's head back. And we get to the bus stop, and it is like torrential downpour. And Taryn, our son, I'm having to because he didn't have any rain gear on at all. Oh. He just had like this light jacket on without a hood. And we have a photo of it. I ended up just taking my jacket, putting it over his head so he could be protected. And he's shivering. and like holding on to me, and I'm like trying to keep him warm, and it was just bad. And Sarah had our newborn, Joseph, in the backpack, and like, well, he's like on the front, like it's a harness, so she's having him guarding him, but it's like it's fabric, it's soaking up the water, and he's just like
just pissed.
Yeah, and Wilder is like just soaked to the
miserable.
bone as well, and like it took over a half hour because of how hard it was raining for the bus to show back up. And so we get on the bus, it's like tightly packed, and so we're having Taryn, Wilder, and Joseph all sit on our laps on a small bus. A lot of hot breathers, just uncomfortable going up this mountainside, and just the kids are cold, they're wet, they're tired, they don't want to do this anymore. But at the top of the pass is a transfer station because the bus that we took up only stays on the St. Mary's side. So when we get to the top of the pass, it's raining even harder up there. And so we just kind of like find the bus station actually had, or the bus stop actually had a seating with cover over it, and I just kind of bully myself into it and just make sure my family can sit down and just start being warm. And then the bus shows up, and there's a lot of people there. They're like wanting to go back, back down to Lake McDonald Lodge.
Well, it's poopy face.
And I just kind of bullied myself up into the front of the line, and I was like, and I straight up told people, unprovoked, I just told people, I was like, we got a newborn, we're getting on this bus. And of course, everybody's like, yep, we totally understand that. So then then the bus ride from Logan Pass to get down to the Lake McDonald Lodge is way longer than it is to get over to St. Mary's. Oh, and I forgot to mention that all the roads being like it was all ripped up. So there's like road construction going on. So we rode all the way down to the Lake McDonald Lodge. And because of the road construction, the road just being ripped up, with all the rain, there's just potholes everywhere. So it was the worst rough fucking ride that we had to go through because we had our kids on our lap. They're uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable. Sarah's uncomfortable. Everybody is just highly uncomfortable. And it probably took about 40 minutes or so to get from Logan, maybe longer, to get from Logan Pass to the Lake McDonald Lodge. And we get down there, and we're still soaked even in the bus for that long. And luckily there was a pizzeria joint right there, and we're like, we're not going anywhere. We're going to get food here. Our bellies need to get full. We need to relax, get warm, get dry. So we ended up just eating there because we were going to try to go back into town that day. And, yeah, it was a pretty miserable day. So,
Damn.
Yeah,
Well,
a
did
lot
it
of
end
things
well?
happened in that short amount of time.
Did it end well?
I mean, yeah. The last day we were there, we ended up just not even going into the park. We just kind of went through the local towns that are around there. So,
So what places do you want to go to next?
for our national park stuff, I think Sarah and I really discussed it, but I think we're trying to go back east. And it's either go back east or we're going to go to... I think it's both going to be back east because we haven't decided if we're going to go to like the New England area. I think just the one up in Maine, the one national park that's up there. But I got family that's out there and that lives on one of the suburbs in Boston. Middleton, I think is the town. Middleborough, that's what it's called. It's just a suburb of Boston, and she's like one of my favorite aunts. She's a cool aunt, and she was like, I think like 3 or 4 years ago we were going to try to go out there, but just didn't make it happen. And I was like telling her, it's like, hey, can we at least like spend one night at your place, so that we don't have to pay for a hotel? And she was like, one night? You can stay here the entire time if you feel like it. So
cool.
And it's kind of funny, like ever since then, like every once in a while she'll like get on Facebook and just message me. It's like, are you guys planning ever to come out here?
Well, that'd be cool to check out and see a part of America that,
Yeah. But there's also like maybe go to like Tennessee where Mammoth Caves are.
Shit, that's a hell of a drive.
Well, we'll fly over there. Yeah. We'll fly over there, and especially it being in Tennessee, Kentucky, we'll like stay in Nashville. Because like everybody I've ever talked to that's been in Nashville, they're like, it's one of the coolest cities you'll ever go to.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to go and do that eventually. So
I want to go to Nashville too.
yeah, so you should. Hell, come with us when we go.
Shit. Check that out for the country music stuff and whatever they got going on. So yeah, what else?
Well, Christmas is in 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
So, or 3 days. 2 nights, but 3 days.
Oh, yeah, that's one thing you can talk about is your turkey hunt.
Oh, my turkey hunt?
Because that was on the channel.
Yes, it was.
So,
I don't know, maybe we'll have to save that for another a podcast, I think.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember that. All right, then.
Yeah.
Well,
Mike, I think we can wrap this up.
Yeah,
and
we're at 2 hours, so all right, man. So tell everybody, where can they find you?
I haven't really got much of a social media following, but just look my name up. I got a Facebook and an Instagram account. So
find Banjo the profile.
Or Banjo the Sproly.
Banjo, yeah.
Yeah. That's our dog. My wife started a page for our English Springer and our Black Lab. So look it up. It's cool. It's Banjo the Sproly. Yeah, just do that, and you can find me there as well.
Cool. Be sure to like, subscribe, smash the bell. Bye.
Bye.